You know, every single species on Earth is playing this high-stakes game of survival. And it turns out most of them have settled on one of two master plans. You're either a specialist or you're a generalist. So let's dive in and break down what that really means.
So on one side, you've got the picky eater, right? The specialist. Think about the giant panda. Its entire world, its whole existence revolves around one single food, bamboo. And then on the other side, you've got the ultimate opportunist, the generalist, like a raccoon, who can pretty much thrive on anything, anywhere.
So, that brings us to the big question. When the pressure is on, which strategy actually works better for long-term survival? Is it better to be an absolute master of one thing, or to be adaptable enough to handle, well, anything that gets thrown at you?
All right, first up, let's talk about the specialists. Their whole strategy is one enormous gamble. They've basically bet everything they have on their world staying exactly the way it is. A specialist species operates inside what scientists call a narrow ecological niche. The easiest way to think about it is like having a super specific job description. They are incredibly good, the best at that one job, in that one office. But they're not very flexible if the company suddenly decides to restructure.
Yeah, the specialist's playbook, it really shows this fascinating trade-off. By tailoring themselves to a very specific resource, like the panda and its bamboo, they become masters of efficiency. As long as the world is stable and predictable, they outcompete everyone. But the second things start to change, that laser focus becomes a huge critical weakness.
And this all-in strategy, it goes so much deeper than just food or where they live. It actually defines the most critical part of their whole survival plan, how they raise the next generation.
Ecologists call this a case-selected strategy. And really, you can just think of it as quality over quantity. These species, we're talking most mammals and birds, they have very few kids, but they invest a massive amount of energy into making sure each one survives. This means lots of parental care, long lifespans, and their populations grow really, really slowly.
And the result of all that effort? It's something called a type 1 survivorship curve. Just look at that top line on the graph. See how it stays almost perfectly flat for most of the lifespan and then takes a sharp dive at the end? That's the quality strategy in action. That high parental investment means most of the offspring actually survive their youth and live to a ripe old age.
Okay, so if specialists are kind of like the boutique artisans of the natural world, then generalists are the sprawling superstores. They're ready for anything. Let's see how that gives them a serious advantage.
A generalist species has what's called a broad ecological niche. They don't have a specific job description at all. They're the ultimate freelancers, able to pivot and take on completely new roles in a huge variety of environments.
So what does the generalist playbook look like? Well, instead of specializing, they use a whole bunch of different resources, and they have a really high tolerance for different conditions. And here's the key. That flexibility, that's what gives them a massive advantage when the world gets unpredictable.
And as you can probably guess, this be-ready-for-anything approach, it also defines how they reproduce. It is a completely different philosophy. This is the R-selected, or quantity over quality strategy. Think insects, fish, plants. The whole plan is to produce a massive number of offspring, but with very little or even zero parental care. They grow up fast, live short lives, and they can make their population numbers just explode in a really short amount of time if the conditions are right. And this strategy gives us a type 3 curve, the total opposite of the specialist. Look at that immediate dramatic drop in the line. That's showing you that most of these individuals die very, very young. It's a pure numbers game. They're just hoping that a few lucky ones out of millions will make it to adulthood. So, we have these two opposing master plans, right? The focus specialist and the flexible generalist. So how do these strategies actually play out when they get tested by the real world? At the end of the day, it all comes down to one single variable: change. How stable is the environment? In a world that's constant and unchanging, the specialist often wins. But in a world that's in flux, the generalist is holding the trump card.
Let's look at a perfect and kind of devastating example of this: the zebra mussel. This little mollusk, it's originally from Eastern Europe, and it basically hitched a ride in the ballast water of ships. It was first discovered in the U.S. Great Lakes way back in 1988. This was a brand new, changing environment.
And this thing is the ultimate generalist and R-strategist. Get this, a single female can lay over 1 million eggs in a year. 1 million. They're not picky about what they eat or where they live, which makes them just incredible competitors.
They filter out all the food that native species need, and even worse, they physically attach themselves to the native mussels, literally smothering them to death.
And the result is as clear as it is tragic. I mean, this graph from the Hudson River tells the entire story. First, watch the black line. That's the native specialist mussel. Now look at the gray line. That's the invading zebra mussels. Their population just explodes, while the native population absolutely plummets, nearly wiped out by the new generalist on the block.
You know, this pattern of generalists just thriving in the face of change, it raises a really fascinating question when we decide to turn the mirror on ourselves.
So what about humans? I mean, by pretty much every definition, we are the planet's ultimate generalists. We've used our technology to expand into nearly every single habitat on Earth, from the freezing Arctic to the blistering desert. And thanks to agriculture, we figured out how to create a food supply almost anywhere we want. We are absolute masters of adapting the environment to suit our needs.
So, here's the crucial point. We've used our incredible generalist adaptability to completely reshape the entire planet. But in doing so, we've created a new, rapidly changing global environment. And the final question for the ultimate generalist is whether we can adapt to the consequences of our own success.